Our movie begins with Larry, who is walking on a hurry down the street. He gets upset when he finds his car has been booted. Then he goes to his old house and finds his ex-wife Erica and her fiancé Don. It's clear that Larry and Don don't like each other and they keep mocking each other. We learn that Larry quit his job and is now opening a new store. Erica tells him that their son Nick can't live with him anymore because Larry keeps changing jobs and homes, which makes the child feel unstable. Larry reassures her and tells her not to worry. At that moment, Nick walks in and Larry takes him to his hockey game. After the game, Larry and Nick walk together and Nick tells him that he doesn't want to be a hockey player. He wants to be a sales representative like Don because Don has a steady income and an office, which is the most important thing. Larry gets upset and keeps mocking Don's job. Nick is also upset that his father will change jobs again and they will have to move. Later, Larry goes to an employment office and the staff member there tells him she's never seen anyone like him before. When Larry is pleased, she clarifies that it's not a compliment because despite his many jobs, he hasn't progressed or succeeded in any of them and she can't help him. But Larry asks for her help because he's having problems. She sympathizes with him and offers him a job, explaining that everyone who has done this job has left it, but she hopes he will stick with it. Larry accepts the job. Then he goes to his new workplace, which is a natural history museum. As soon as he enters, he meets an employee named Rebecca and tells her he has a job interview with Mr. Cecil. On the way, they look at the statues in the museum. Suddenly, the museum director yells at them because he doesn't want anywhere near the statues. Then Larry meets Cecil and notices he's a funny guy who jokes a lot. Cecil starts telling Larry that the museum is losing a lot of money because the younger generation isn't interested in the statues. He explains that the museum management might fire him and his colleagues, Gus and Reginald, at any time. Cecil introduces Larry to his colleagues and tells them that Larry will be the new night guard. Larry gets nervous and then Cecil takes him on a tour of the museum and explains the rules of the job. After a while, Larry goes home and calls Erica to tell her that he found a new job and they won't have to move. He asks her to inform Nick about this. The next day, Larry goes to work and meets Cecil and his colleagues. Cecil gives him his keys, flashlight, and instruction manual and asks him to put them on his belt. Cecil tells him he must follow all the instructions and ensure nothing gets in or out of the museum. Then they leave Larry alone. Larry stays in the museum and keeps himself busy with work until he suddenly realizes that the large dinosaur skeleton is missing from its place. When he hears a strange noise, Larry discovers that the dinosaur went to drink water. When the dinosaur notices Larry, it chases him. Larry runs and hides under the desk, then grabs the phone and calls Cecil to tell him what happened. Cecil tells him to read the instructions he gave him and hangs up. When Larry reads the instructions, he finds out he needs to throw a bone to the dinosaur. Larry finds a bone nearby and throws it to the dinosaur. The dinosaur catches the bone and throws it back to Larry, wanting to play fetch. Then Larry realizes that everything in the museum, including the statues, has come to life and is talking to him. Suddenly, a group of soldiers starts chasing him, but he quickly gets into the elevator and escapes. Larry was amazed that all the exhibits and statues are moving as if they're alive, and a big battle breaks out in the museum. Larry reads in the instructions that he must lock up the lions or they will eat him. When Larry asks a statue where the lions are, the statue responds. Larry goes to the lions and finds many live animals. Suddenly, an elephant pushes him into a cage that looks like a jungle. Larry is forced to close the door, trapping himself with the animals. Larry tries to escape and open the cage door, but he discovers his keys are missing. When he reads the instructions, he learns that the monkey stole his keys. Larry tries to get the keys from the monkey, but the monkey bites his nose, steals the instruction book, and tears them up. Larry gets anxious and sits down to rest, but then a group of tiny soldiers start throwing pin-like objects at him. Suddenly, they tie his leg, knock him to the ground, and tie him up. Suddenly, a tiny train moves towards him, and Larry asks them to stop the train, but they refuse. Since the train is so small, it doesn't affect Larry, and he manages to free himself and stand up. He finds himself facing Octavius and his people who are scared of Larry because they think he's a giant. They shoot tiny fire bullets at him, but they are so small that they don't affect him. Suddenly, the 26th president of the United States appears, takes Larry on a horse, and they escape. The president explains to Larry that ever since Amun-Ra arrived at the museum, everything in the museum has come to life, and every night, everything wakes up. He tells Larry that everything in the museum is under his protection throughout the night, and if anything leaves the museum and daylight hits it, it will turn to dust. The president says he will help Larry get everything back to the way it was tonight. After a while, everything in the museum returns to its original state and all the figures become statues again. The next morning, Cecile and his colleagues arrive at the museum. Larry yells at Cecile for not mentioning the coming to life at night thing. Larry quits the job. Then he leaves the museum. As he's leaving, Larry sees Dawn and Nick coming to check out his new job. Larry gets nervous and tells them he's not feeling well right now and will give them a tour of the museum another day. After they leave, Larry returns to the museum and tells Cecile and his colleagues that he might work one more night at the museum. The manager then talks to Larry and tells him there's a problem with the small statues, particularly that Octavius is very aggressive. Larry jokes about it, but the manager insists that it's historical and cannot be changed. Larry asks Cecile if he has another set of instructions, but unfortunately, Cecile doesn't. He tells Larry to read more history books. Later, Rebecca arrives at the museum with some children for a tour. Larry sees her and asks if they can sit together and exchange information about the museum. Rebecca agrees, and after finishing the tour, they sit down and she tells him more about the statues in the museum. Larry then tells her about himself, explaining that he's divorced and has a 10-year-old son, and that's why he took the night guard job to provide stability in his life. Afterward, Larry goes to the library, reads history books, researches the characters in the museum, and understands each of them. The next day, Larry prepares and goes to the museum. Before Cecile and his colleagues leave, Reginald uses a trick to make a copy of the museum key. At night, before the statue wake up, Larry prepares everything to keep everything in place and ensure nothing leaves the museum. Larry throws a bone to the dinosaur, lights a fire with a lighter for the caveman, and gives the wall statue gum as it wanted. He also gives the monkey toy keys so it won't steal the real keys from him. Additionally, he installs glass barriers for the tiny people to prevent them from tying him up or throwing things at him. But Larry is shocked when he finds the animals have escaped their enclosures and the wall statue has chewed the gum and stuck it all over its face. Suddenly, Larry finds the monkey in front of him holding his keys, realizing it stole them again. The monkey runs to open the window and one of the cavemen escapes. Larry sees the cavemen have set themselves on fire with the lighter, so he quickly puts out the fire. The president helps Larry retrieve the keys from the monkey, but Larry gets fed up and decides to quit his job. Before leaving the museum, Larry discovers the open window and finds that the caveman has turned to dust as the sun came up. The next day, Nick and his friends arrive at the museum for a tour, but Nick is shocked to see the manager yelling at his father for being negligent, so he leaves quickly without Larry noticing. At that moment, Larry apologizes to the manager and asks to work one more night, to which the manager agrees. Later, Larry goes to his son Nick and suggests he comes to work with him that night. Erica is very worried about what Larry wants to do, but he reassures her that their son will have fun. That night, Larry takes his son to the museum. Before Rebecca leaves, Larry tells her that the statue come to life at night, but she doesn't believe him and leaves. Larry then tells his son that everything in the museum will soon start moving, but as time passes, nothing happens. When they go to Amun-Ra's tomb, they find the golden tablet, which is the source of the statue's life, is missing. Looking out the window, Larry hears noises outside and discovers that Cecile and his colleagues have stolen the golden tablet. Nick finds the golden tablet and activates it, but Cecile catches him, takes it, and locks him in the museum after all the animals have escaped. At that moment, Amun-Ra's guard starts chasing Larry and his son. Larry opens Amun-Ra's tomb and asks him to stop his guards. Amun-Ra orders them to stand down. Afterwards, all the statues gather and Larry convinces them to work together to retrieve the golden tablet, or else they won't come to life every night. He starts assigning tasks to each one and they manage to catch Cecile's colleagues and tie them up. However, Cecile still has the golden tablet and makes a run for it. Larry chases him and after a long pursuit, he manages to take the gold tablet back from Cecile. Larry then calls Rebecca to come and see the statues while they're alive. She is shocked and excited as she loves the characters in the museum and starts talking to them. The next day, the news reports that the statues had come to life and left the museum. When the manager sees the news, he decides to fire Larry. However, he is shocked to see that the number of visitors to the museum has increased significantly. The manager reconsiders and reinstates Larry in his job. On Father's Day at Nick's school, Nick and his father are celebrated by all the students and parents. They're proud of Larry, who promises to take them on a tour of the museum. And that's it. If you like this recap, hit like, share, and subscribe to our channel to keep seeing content like this one. If you have any requests or thoughts, drop them below in the comment section and we will see you at the next one. Peace out.